Jerome Cully vanished from the public eye years ago, but when his blurred reflection appeared in a rain-soaked CCTV frame, it triggered the unraveling of Birmingham's most untouchable drug empire. Alongside Malik Farouk, a scrapyard owner with secrets buried deeper than his crushed cars, no social media, no reckless street deals, and no known leaders. They used kids as young as 12 to pass messages and switch phones every week. A single white Ford Transit van appeared again and again, always at odd hours, always in different parts of the city. No faces, no clear interactions, just a silent vehicle moving through the city like a ghost. That van became the focus of a secret investigation. Police didn't know who was inside or where it was going, but they knew one thing: this was their only lead. For the first time, the Ridgeway Crew had left a trail. Small, fragile, but real. And that changed everything. Their drugs weren't being sold on corners, they were delivered like groceries, through coded drops and disguised couriers. Phone records showed Farouk had been in contact with a number that pinged across several Ridgeway-controlled zones. His role wasn't central, but it was key. He had supplied vehicles, swapped plates, and scrubbed identifiers clean. When questioned further, he let slip a critical piece of information. The van was always collected on Sundays, just after 3 a.m. from beneath a railway bridge in Bordsley. That location, quiet and hidden from main roads, became the next target. Surveillance teams were deployed. If the Ridgeway Crew stuck to their routine, police were finally going to see who was behind the wheel. For years, the Ridgeway Crew had stayed ahead of law enforcement, leaving no fingerprints or digital trails. For investigators, it was perfect, isolated, with few sightlines and even fewer witnesses. Inside, the silhouette of a single driver was visible, but he never stepped out. He waited with the engine running, glancing in the mirrors. Minutes later, 2 motorbikes emerged from the shadows. One rider approached the van and passed a thick envelope through the window. The other carried a small box and waved it in front of the van's windshield. Investigators watching live recognized the object immediately: a signal jammer. Police installed hidden cameras in drainage grates and used unmarked vans equipped with thermal lenses. Then they waited. For 4 Sundays, nothing happened. Each week, a team would prepare in silence, holding their breath. As the minutes passed without a trace of movement, some started to doubt the tip. But on the 5th Sunday, just after 3 a.m, the white Ford Transit finally appeared. It didn't stay long enough to be caught by patrols, and it never parked directly under streetlights. The movements were precise, like someone had mapped out the safest routes ahead of time. Analysts started plotting the van's appearances on a digital map, and what emerged was chilling. The locations matched places known for drug activity, areas where residents had filed anonymous complaints, where overdoses had occurred, or where rival crews had mysteriously backed away. But now, they had unknowingly handed over a piece of their puzzle. In one rainy clip, the van made a sharp turn, and its reflection caught in a puddle. The image was blurry, but after enhancing and freezing several frames, investigators saw the faint imprint of a license plate. It was only partial, but enough to run through vehicle records. Investigators combed through the CCTV clips, each carefully edited to hide faces and blur plates. Whoever had created the footage knew what they were doing, but one thing couldn't be erased: the pattern. Rumors spread that the crew had someone on the inside, maybe even more than one. Every police operation failed before it even started, like the gang already knew what was coming. They unknowingly exposed the Ridgeway Crew, a gang so silent and calculated, it had ruled the city from the shadows. He'd reported it stolen 6 months earlier, claiming it had vanished without a trace. But when police visited his yard, something felt off. Farouk had no surveillance on his property and kept changing details in his story. Eventually, he admitted the van had been sold off the books to someone who paid cash, no names, no questions asked. What began as a routine warehouse fire led investigators into a chilling web of burner phones, hack surveillance, and a gang bold enough to operate above a police station. This is the true story of how faces hidden in pixels brought down a criminal machine built to be invisible. Birmingham had always wrestled with crime, but something had shifted in recent years. It wasn't the loud kind of crime that made headlines. It was quiet, calculated, and spreading like rot beneath the surface. People noticed fewer police patrols in the Losels and Handsworth neighborhoods. Shopkeepers no longer stayed open after dark. A fire broke out in an abandoned warehouse on Icknield Port Road. Firefighters responding to the scene found more than just smoke. Tucked behind burnt crates were stacks of license plates, bags of unregistered SIM cards, and most importantly, a USB drive. At first glance, it looked corrupted, but when police tech analysts decrypted the files, they discovered hours of surveillance footage. Not from police cams, but from hacked CCTV feeds across the city. Parents whispered warnings to their kids about crossing certain streets. No one could point to a single name, but everyone knew there was a new power taking hold. It was called the Ridgeway Crew, a name only spoken in hushed tones. They didn't flash money or fight for turf. They moved like shadows, impossible to track or pin down. The streets belonged to them, and they didn't need to announce it. For years, authorities had tried to crack down on Birmingham's drug trade, but the Ridgeway Crew operated differently. Then came a slip-up so small, it almost went unnoticed. The footage showed streets, alleyways, and parks all connected by something subtle. The discovery of the USB drive marked a turning point. The white Ford Transit van kept reappearing in different areas of Birmingham, always at night, always for no more than a few minutes. Still, without more detail, it was all circumstantial. That's when a technician noticed something others had missed. The van had originally belonged to a man named Malik Farouk, a small-time scrapyard owner in the Digbeth area. That confession was enough to dig deeper. The railway bridge in Bordsley was nondescript, surrounded by crumbling walls and disused buildings. It was the kind of place most people passed by without noticing. The van pulled up slowly, its headlights briefly cutting through the darkness. Inside, the silhouette of a single driver was visible, but he never stepped out. He waited with the engine running, glancing in the mirrors. Minutes later, two motorbikes emerged from the shadows. One rider approached the van and passed a thick envelope through the window. The other carried a small box and waved it in front of the van's windshield. Investigators watching live recognized the object immediately as signal jammer. The jammer interrupted tracking signals, causing nearby traffic sensors to spike, which triggered an alert at the West Midlands Cyber Unit. Though designed to disrupt GPS and Bluetooth, a faint birthmark was visible just under his left eye when he glanced at the cashier. Facial recognition software matched the image to Jerome Kelly, a former amateur boxer with no current address. Known in the area as Red Mark, Jerome had vanished from public life 2 years earlier. No job, no social accounts, no digital presence of any kind. By overlapping phone pings, burner numbers, and delivery patterns, they began to spot clusters of individuals who traveled together, turned off phones at the same time. The gang had leased the apartment for nearly 2 years using a fake identity. The Ridgeway Crew wasn't just avoiding the police, they were watching them. Every move, every raid, every failed operation now made sense. The gang had been one step ahead because they were listening from the ceiling above. The box had been checked in as part of an old inventory by a fake charity later linked to the Ridgeway Crew. One particularly shocking clip revealed drugs being loaded into hollowed-out compartments inside school buses that were then used to run regular routes. Children had unknowingly ridden inches away from hidden narcotics. Inside were flash drives filled with raw, unedited CCTV footage. More arrests followed, and this time, the charges stuck. The footage not only confirmed identities, but painted a picture of a network that reached into nearly every corner of the city. The Ridgeway Crew, once thought to be invisible, had left behind the one thing they couldn't erase: video evidence. The videos were the original versions of the clips previously found on the USB in the warehouse, except these hadn't been altered. No blurred faces. Surveillance cameras no longer felt like eyes watching in fear, but tools of justice. The gang that once manipulated shadows had been dragged into the light by the very technology they thought they controlled. No cut frames, just clear, damning evidence. The illusion of their undetectability wasn't magic, it was surveillance turned inside out. From that location, they monitored police chatter through unsecured Wi-Fi, intercepted emails, and watched patrol schedules. They even had miniature cameras aimed at the parking lot to track who entered and exited the building, or visited the same safe houses. Within weeks, they had outlined the gang's operating system. It wasn't built around a single boss. Instead, 4 individuals ran operations like a rotating committee. Each handled a portion of the network: distribution, transport, laundering. The Ridgeway Crew operated with such discipline that even among those detained, few had phones or documents linking them directly to drug trafficking. Most remained silent. Some claimed ignorance, others denied involvement entirely. Only 18 people were formally charged in the first wave. It was a frustrating outcome for officers who had risked everything. But the breakthrough they needed came from an unlikely source. And logistics before switching roles every month to stay ahead of suspicion. The device inadvertently gave the team a clue. Its signal had a unique signature. Investigators traced it to a high-end electronics store in Leicester, one of only a few places in the country that sold such tech legally, a reference to the gang's silent dominance over Birmingham. It had taken months of surveillance, digital forensics, and cross-agency cooperation to reach this moment. On a cold morning in January, at exactly 4 a.m., 14 locations across the city were raided simultaneously. The targets included warehouses, apartments, shops, and even a small daycare center that served as a front for laundering cash. Over 60 people were taken into custody in the largest coordinated sweep Birmingham had seen in a decade. The store's records showed it had sold 3 units in the past year. 2 were accounted for, purchased online by verified buyers. The third was sold in person, paid for in cash. Store CCTV showed the buyer a man in a gray hoodie and gloves, but there was one telling detail. Now he had reappeared in a back alley transaction caught on hidden police cameras. With his name and image, investigators finally had someone real. They began digging into his financial history, his phone records, and anyone connected to him. What they found added new layers to the mystery. Jerome hadn't used a bank account in nearly 2 years. Yet his mother, a retired nurse, had purchased a luxury home in Moseley for £500,000 all in cash. She claimed it was the result of a lucky lottery win, but no records backed it up. Instead, the money had been funneled through a web of shell companies based in Cyprus and Eastern Europe, each one harder to trace than the last. He wasn't the leader, but he was a direct connection to those who were. The Ridgeway Crew was no longer invisible. The trail led to offshore accounts, cryptocurrency wallets, and fake charities that operated under the guise of youth outreach programs. These groups received donations, hosted community events, and quietly moved large sums across international borders. The Ridgeway Crew had built a financial smokescreen so complex that it could have easily been mistaken for a corporate structure. But now, one weak link was exposing it all. Their faces were starting to emerge from the shadows. With Jerome Kelly identified, investigators widened their search. Forensic accountants began untangling the threads. Investigators used a method called digital stacking to compare mobile phone activity across different locations and times. One address kept appearing in their network model, a rented flat above a local police substation in Aston. Investigators were stunned. It was a shocking revelation. The operation to bring down the Ridgeway Crew was named Iron Quiet. Despite the dramatic arrests, prosecutors faced a familiar challenge: evidence. A janitor working at a city council storage facility discovered a locked metal box during a routine cleanup. The footage showed members of the crew making exchanges, transporting duffel bags into delivery vans, and modifying vehicles in hidden garages. The videos became the backbone of a new wave of indictments. Birmingham slowly began to breathe again. Surveillance cameras no longer felt like eyes watching in fear, but tools of justice. The gang that once manipulated shadows had been dragged into the light by the very technology they thought they controlled.